Aspire to a clean career, leaving no shame for descendants. Hello everyone. Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Case Stories, Cases Judged by Bao Gong. Today, I'm going to bring you a story called The Golden Carp Demon. In the eastern part of Yangzhou, near the city gate, there lived a scholar named Liu Zhen. Liu Zhen had been intelligent since childhood and loved reading. However, he had yet to marry, as he wished to focus solely on his studies and lived a life of poverty. That year, it happened to be time for the triennial imperial examination held during the reign of Emperor Renzong of the Song dynasty, and Liu Zhen decided to participate. He packed his belongings and set off for the capital to take the exam. Unfortunately, Liu Zhen had limited funds and couldn't depart earlier. Delays on his journey caused him to arrive just as the examination ended. Sighing, he lamented, "I truly have no luck to have missed such an important exam." He then gathered what remained of his money and rented a monk's room at Kaiyuan Temple to continue his studies and prepare for the next exam. Time flew by, and soon the Lantern Festival arrived. The capital city was adorned with beautiful lanterns. Approximately 15 kilometers outside the city, there was a deep pond called Bao Pool, with waters that seemed bottomless. Living in the pool was a golden carp that had been cultivating for 1,000 years. This carp often transformed into a maiden to seduce travelers passing by. On the night of the festival, hearing that there were beautiful lanterns to admire in the human world, the carp shed its fish form, spat out a small pearl, and transformed into a young maid of about 17 or 18 years old. Holding a lantern, she entered the city. The maid was extraordinarily beautiful and caught the attention of countless people. As late evening approached, the golden carp noticed that some lanterns were still lit on the streets. Fearing she might revert to her original form, she slipped into the rear garden of Prime Minister Jin's residence and hid in the large pond there. However, as the festival ended, the golden carp was reluctant to return to Bao Pool. That day, she encountered the Prime Minister's daughter, Miss Jean Xian, who was strolling through the garden with her maid to admire the flowers. Jean Xian noticed a particularly lovely cluster of red and white peonies and had her maid pick one for her. She then leaned against the pond railing, sipping wine. At that moment, the golden carp surfaced from the pond. Seeing the fish, Jean Xian poured the remaining wine from her cup into the pond, and the carp swallowed it in one gulp. Jean Xian smiled, watched for a while longer, and then returned to her chamber. The golden carp, knowing that Jean Xian loved peonies, began to spray water on the peonies in the garden every night, making their colors even more vibrant. Miss Jean Xian came to the garden daily to pick and admire the flowers. In late spring and early summer, the scholar Liu Zhen had been living in the monk's room for a long time, and the silver he had brought with him was spent. His friends had also returned home. After much deliberation, he had no choice but to write a few pieces of calligraphy to sell to the noble families in the city. One day, Liu Zhen arrived at the entrance of Prime Minister Jin's residence, just as the Prime Minister was returning from visiting a friend. Seeing the calligraphy Liu Zhen brought, the Prime Minister ordered someone to retrieve it for his viewing. The Prime Minister was full of praise upon seeing the writing and invited Liu Zhen into the residence. After asking about his background and noticing his refined demeanor, he decided to keep Liu Zhen in the west wing of his mansion to teach the younger members of his household. He also had Liu Zhen's belongings moved from the temple to a guest room on the eastern side near the back garden. With the Prime Minister's patronage, Liu Zhen no longer had to worry about his living situation. He focused on his studies and even took over writing letters on behalf of the household, earning the Prime Minister's deep respect. One night, Liu Zhen happened to walk into the garden and saw Miss Jean Xian, the Prime Minister's daughter, admiring the flowers with her maids under the trellis. Seeing this, Liu Zhen couldn't help but mutter to himself, "I've heard that Prime Minister Jean has a daughter of great beauty. Now that I see her in person, it truly lives up to the reputation. If I am fortunate enough to pass the imperial exam and marry such a beautiful wife, my life would be complete." Worried that someone might overhear his words, Liu Zhen quickly returned to his room, where he calmed his mind by reciting a few poems by Du Fu. As the saying goes, once a person's heart is moved, wicked thoughts are quick to follow. The golden carp demon had been looking for an opportunity to seduce a righteous man, but she hadn't found a chance, until now. That night, seeing that Liu Zhen was still awake, she transformed into the likeness of Miss Jean Xian and knocked on his door. Liu Zhen opened the door and was astonished to see that the visitor was none other than Miss Jean Xian, whom he had met earlier in the day. The golden carp demon said, "Scholar, don't be afraid. I've sneaked out secretly. I heard you reciting poetry, and I've come to seek your guidance." Liu Zhen, both delighted and shy, sat down at the table with her to discuss poetry. As the night grew late, they undressed and went to bed together. Before dawn, the golden carp demon woke up early and said to Liu Zhen, "I'll come to accompany you earlier tonight." Then she left. From that night onward, the golden carp demon came to be with Liu Zhen every night, and their affection for each other deepened. She often brought wine and food, and they would feast together. One day, she said to Liu Zhen, "Although you're living well here, I fear that if you stay too long, the maids might discover us. If they tell my parents, they'll be furious. Why don't we pack our things and return to your home together? That way, we can be husband and wife forever." Liu Zhen replied, "If we elope, Prime Minister Jean will surely send people after us. How could we escape such punishment?" The golden carp demon responded, "My mother dotes on me, and we haven't yet discussed marriage. Even if my family searches for us, they won't have any evidence." Liu Zhen, finding this reasonable, agreed to her plan. They set a date, 14 nights later, to prepare a boat by the river. Miss Jean Xian would gather some silver and then leave with Liu Zhen to return to Yangzhou. Later, when Prime Minister Jean found out that Liu Zhen had fled, he did not pursue the matter since nothing in the house had been lost. Since the golden carp demon had left, the peonies in the garden began to wither. Miss Jean Xian, missing the blooming peonies day and night, soon fell ill. Although the Jean family summoned many skilled doctors, none could cure her. The Prime Minister's wife was deeply worried and asked her daughter about the cause of her illness. Jean Hsien revealed that it was due to her longing for the peonies in the garden. Jin's mother then shared this with Prime Minister Jean, who said, "These flowers can only be found in Yangzhou." So, he sent his servants with a large sum of gold and silver to Yangzhou, instructing them to buy the peonies from anyone who had them, whether they were from noble families or common households. The Prime Minister's servants traveled to Yangzhou in search of the peonies, and eventually discovered that only a few clusters of the flowers were growing at Liu Zhen's house near the eastern gate. When the servants arrived at Liu Zhen's home, Liu Zhen happened to be out. They saw a woman standing behind the door, and she asked, "Who are you?" The servants were puzzled, thinking, "This voice sounds just like our young mistress." As they approached, they realized that the woman indeed looked exactly like Jean Hsien. At that moment, Liu Zhen returned, and the servants recognized him as well. Everyone was stunned, unsure of what to do. Liu Zhen asked the servants why they had come, and they explained that Miss Jean Hsien had fallen ill from missing the peonies, and the Prime Minister had sent them to purchase flowers. Liu Zhen laughed and said, "Your lady has been with me here for nearly half a year. How could there be another Miss Jean Hsien?" The servants, unable to explain the strange situation, hurried back to the capital overnight to report the matter to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Jean found the story hard to believe, so he sent more servants to Yangzhou to bring back the second Jean Hsien. When they arrived, Jean Hsien at Liu Zhen's house did not object, and she, along with Liu Zhen, followed the servants back to the capital to meet the Prime Minister. Upon seeing her, Prime Minister Jean was shocked to find that this woman truly was Jean Hsien. His confusion grew when the Prime Minister's wife came out and said, "My daughter is still in her room and hasn't gotten up yet. How can there be another one here?" Prime Minister Jean questioned Liu Zhen about the matter, and Liu Zhen, not daring to hide anything, told him the whole story of his encounter with Jean Hsien in the garden. The Prime Minister exclaimed, "It seems you've been deceived by a demon." He immediately took a carriage to Kaifeng to meet with Bao Gong and explained the situation to him. After hearing the details, Bao Gong ordered his officer Zhang Long to bring both Jean Hsien's and Liu Zhen to the court. In the main hall, Bao Gong carefully observed the two women, and they indeed looked identical. Having no other option, Bao Gong ordered his men to bring out the ancient demon-revealing mirror, forged by Emperor Shenyuan. The mirror was hung in the hall, and within moments, the golden carp demon emitted a black mist. The hall was instantly plunged into darkness. A loud noise echoed through the blackness, and when the mist dispersed, both Jean Hsien's had vanished. Prime Minister Jean and Bao Gong were left astonished, and the others were equally shocked. Bao Gong said to the Prime Minister, "Sir, please return home for now. Give me a few days, and I will surely find your daughter." With no other choice, Prime Minister Jean left. Bao Gong had Liu Zhen wait outside and posted an announcement. The notice read, "Anyone who knows the whereabouts of the demon and Miss Jean Hsien will be rewarded with 5,000 strings of coins." The next morning, Bao Gong went to the city god temple to perform a sacrificial ritual. Upon hearing Bao Gong's summons, the city god immediately dispatched ghost soldiers to search far and wide. The ghost soldiers discovered that the culprit was a 1,000-year-old golden carp from the Bao pond. The city god informed Bao Gong and alerted the dragon kings of the four seas, commanding them to capture the golden carp demon. The dragon kings, upon hearing this, sent aquatic soldiers to capture the demon in the rivers, lakes, and seas. However, the golden carp demon repeatedly defeated the aquatic soldiers. Left with no choice, the dragon kings petitioned the Jade Emperor in heaven, who sent celestial soldiers to assist in the capture of the golden carp demon. Despite being chased, the demon eluded even the celestial soldiers. Bao Gong continued to perform sacrifices day and night at the city god temple, urging the city god to resolve the case quickly. The city god had no choice but to notify the dragon kings again. This time, the dragon kings sealed the gates of the four seas to trap and capture the golden carp demon. Pursued relentlessly, the demon had no choice but to flee to the South Sea. At that time, there was a man in the capital with the surname Zheng, who was known for his charitable deeds. He often worshipped a light ink sketch of Guanyin hanging on the wall. Zheng had been faithfully offering incense to the painting every day without fail. One night, Zheng dreamt of a plain-dressed woman who said to him, "Go to the riverbank tomorrow and take me to see Bao Gong. You will be rewarded in the future." Upon waking, Zheng followed the instructions from his dream. Early in the morning, he went to the riverbank, where he indeed found a middle-aged woman standing under a willow tree. The woman held a bamboo basket, inside which lay a small golden carp. The woman told Zheng, "Yesterday, the golden carp from Bao Pond, pursued by the dragon kings, had no place to escape and fled to the South Sea. I lured it into this basket, and now it cannot escape." Recently, Bao Gong posted a notice offering a reward to anyone who could provide information about the golden carp demon. "Take me to him, and I will share the reward with you." Overjoyed, Zheng hurriedly took the woman to the government office, arriving just as Bao Gong and Prime Minister Jin were discussing the case in the main hall. After the attendant announced their arrival, Bao Gong summoned them, and Zheng relayed the woman's words. Bao Gong was delighted, exclaiming, "So, it really was this demon." He ordered the officials to place the basket in the hall and questioned the golden carp demon. Bound by magical restraints, the golden carp demon confessed from inside the basket, detailing how it had deceived Liu Zhen and revealing that Miss Jean Xian was currently trapped in a rocky cave near Bao Pond. Bao Gong intended to have the demon executed by boiling, but the woman stopped him, saying, "This demon has lived for 1,000 years. Even if you boil it, it won't die. Let me take it back, and I will handle it myself." Bao Gong agreed to her request and rewarded her with 5,000 strings of coins, as promised in the public notice. As they left, the woman handed all the money to Zheng, saying, "This is my repayment for your 2 years of sincere worship. You may tell others about this." With that, the woman disappeared. It was only then that Zheng realized the woman was none other than the Guanyin Bodhisattva he had been worshipping. Grateful, he returned home and commissioned an artisan to paint another ink image of Guanyin. In this new image, Guanyin held a bamboo basket with a golden carp inside. Upon hearing about this event, many people in the capital followed suit, and this is how one of the Guanyin Bodhisattva statues, known as the fish basket Guanyin, came to be. Bao Gong then sent men to the cave to find Miss Jean Xian, but she had already died, with only a faint warmth remaining in her chest. After consulting several shamans, they concluded that Miss Jean Xian could only be revived by someone with a destined connection to her through a breath of life. Suddenly, it seemed that Bao Gong had an epiphany, and he said to Prime Minister Jean, "Could it be that Liu Zhen is the one destined for Miss Jean Xian? Since he loves her deeply, I can officiate their union today and fulfill their destiny." With that, Bao Gong summoned Liu Zhen and instructed him to breathe life into Miss Jean Xian. Miraculously, she awoke, much to the amazement of everyone present. Overjoyed, Bao Gong ordered that the two be escorted back to Prime Minister Jin's residence. That very night, Liu Zhen and Miss Jean Xian were married. The following year, Liu Zhen passed the imperial examinations, and shortly thereafter, he was promoted to a position as a high-ranking official in the Ministry of Personnel. Later, Liu Zhen and Miss Jean Xian had two sons, both of whom followed in their father's footsteps and became government officials when they grew up. Alright. Today's case story, The Golden Carp Demon, concludes here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave your comments and share with others. See you again in the next issue.